Hansel and Gretel. Once upon a time, there dwelt a poor woodcutter near the large woods. He lived with his wife and 2 children from his former marriage. A boy was called Hansel, and a little girl was named Gretel. He always had little enough to eat. To make matters worse, there was a great famine in the land. The woodcutter could not get even daily bread for his family. He has nothing to do, so he lay thinking in his bed one evening. He sighed and said to his wife, "What will become of us? How can we feed our children when we have no more than we can eat ourselves?" "Well then, my husband," answered she, "we will lead them away quite early in the morning into the thickest part of the woods. There we make them a fire and give them each a little piece of bread." She continued, "Then we will go to our work and leave them alone. They will not find the way home again, and we shall be freed from them." "No, wife," replied he, "I can never do that. How can you bring your heart to leave my children all alone in the woods? Wild beasts will soon come and tear them to pieces." "Oh, you simpleton, you are foolish," said she. "Then we must all die of hunger." She gave him no peace until he consented. In the end he said, "Ah, but I shall regret the poor children." However, the 2 children, Hansel and Gretel, had not gone to sleep because of hunger. They overheard what the stepmother said to their father. Gretel wept bitterly and said to Hansel, "What will become of us?" "Be quiet, Gretel," said Hansel. "Do not cry. I will soon help you." As soon as their parents fell asleep, he got up and put on his coat. He unfastened the back door and slipped out of the house in silence. The moon shone so brightly that the white pebbles which lay before the door seemed like silver pieces. They glittered so radiantly. Hansel stooped down and put as many pebbles into his pocket as it would hold. He returned home and said to Gretel, "Dear sister, be comfortable. Sleep in peace. God will not forsake us." He went to sleep too. The next morning, even before the sun arose, the wife went and awoke the 2 children. "Get up, you lazy things. We are going into the forest to chop wood." She gave them each a piece of bread, saying, "There is something for your dinner. Do not eat it before the time because you will get nothing else." Gretel took all the bread in her apron because Hansel's pocket was full of pebbles. They all set out on their way to the forest. When they went some distance, Hansel stood still and peeped back at the house from time to time. He repeated this several times until his father said, "Hansel, what are you peeping at? Why do you lag behind? Take care and make haste." "Yes, father," said Hansel. "I am looking at a white cat sitting upon the roof of the house and trying to say goodbye." "You simpleton," said the wife, "that is not a cat. It is only the sun shining on the white chimney. Hurry up anyway." In reality, Hansel was not looking at a cat. Every time he stopped, he dropped a pebble out of his pocket upon the path to mark the way to his house. When they came to the middle of the woods, the father told the children to collect wood. He would make them a fire so that they should not be cold. Hansel and Gretel gathered together quite a little mountain of twigs. Then father set fire for his children. The flame burnt up high. Then the wife said aloud, "Now you children, lie down near the fire and rest yourselves. Your father and I will go into the forest and chop wood. When we are done, we will come back and call you." Hansel and Gretel sat down by the fire. It was noon and the fire warmed the children. Each ate a piece of bread. Because they heard blows of an axe, they thought their father was near and not far away. However, the sound was not that of an axe, but a branch which their father had bound to a withered tree, so as to be blown to and fro by the wind. 2 children waited so long that at last their eyes closed from weariness. They fell fast asleep. When they awoke, it was quite dark. Gretel began to cry. "How shall we get out of the wood?" Hansel tried to comfort her, saying, "Wait a little while till the moon rises, and then we will quickly find the way." The moon soon shone forth. Now Hansel, taking his sister's hand, followed the pebbles which glittered like new coined silver pieces and showed them the path. All night long they walked on. As day broke, they came to their father's house. They knocked at the door. The wife opened it and saw Hansel and Gretel. She exclaimed, "You wicked children, why did you sleep so long in the woods? We thought you were never coming home again." But their father was very glad because it had grieved his heart to leave them all alone in the woods. Not long afterwards, there was again great scarcity in every corner of the land. One night, the children overheard their mother saying to their father. Their stepmother said, "We are running out of food. Everything is almost eaten. We have only half a loaf left, and then we must starve." She insisted, "The children must be sent away. We will take them deeper into the woods, so that they may not find the way out again. It is the only means of escape from this trouble for us." Her husband felt heavy at heart and talked back. It would be better to share the last crust with the children. However, his wife would listen to nothing that he said. She scolded and reproached her husband without end. Now the children had heard what had been said as they lay awake. As soon as the old people went to sleep, Hansel got up quietly. He intended to pick up some pebbles as before. But this time the wife had locked the door so that he could not get out. Nevertheless, he comforted Gretel. He said, "Do not cry, sleep in peace. The good God will not forsake us." Early in the morning, the stepmother came and pulled them out of bed. She gave them each a slice of bread, which was still smaller than the one they had last time. On his way to the forest, Hansel broke his bread in his pocket. He stopped every now and then and dropped a crumb upon the path. "Hansel, why do you stop and look around?" said the father. "Keep in the path." "I am looking at my little dove," answered Hansel. "She is nodding a goodbye to me." "Simpleton," said the wife, "that is no dove, but only the sun shining on the chimney." But Hansel kept still dropping crumbs as he went along. The mother led the children deep into the woods where they had never been before, and there, making an immense fire, she said to them, "Sit down here and rest. When you feel tired, you can sleep for a little while. We are going into the forest to cut down wood. In the evening, when we are ready, we will come and fetch you." Gretel shared her bread with Hansel at noon because Hansel had dropped down his bread on the path. Then they went to sleep. The evening arrived. Neither father nor stepmother came to fetch the poor children. They awoke in the dark night. This time again, Hansel comforted his sister by saying, "Only wait, Gretel, till the moon comes out. Then we shall see the crumbs of bread which I have dropped. They will show us the way home." When the moon began to shine, they got up. However, they could not see any crumbs because the thousands of birds which had been flying about in the woods and fields had already picked them up. Hansel kept saying to Gretel, "We will soon find the way." But they did not. They walked the whole night long and the next day. Still they did not come out of the woods. They got very hungry because they had nothing to eat but the berries which they found among the bushes. Soon they got so tired and exhausted that they could not drag themselves along. They lay down under a tree and went to sleep. It was now the third morning since they had left their father's house. They still walked on. They only got deeper and deeper into the woods. Hansel was worried that they would die of hunger. In the middle of the day, they saw a beautiful snow-white bird sitting on a bough, which sang so sweetly that they stood still quite a while and listened to it. The bird spread its wings, left off the bough and flew away. They followed it until it arrived at a cottage upon the roof of which the bird perched. When they went close up to it, they noticed that the cottage was made of bread and cakes and the window panes were made of clear sugar. "We will go in there," said Hansel. "We will have a glorious feast. I will eat a piece of the roof. You can eat the window. All of them look sweet." Hansel reached up and broke a piece off the roof in order to see how it tasted. Gretel stepped up to the window and began to bite it. Then a sweet voice called out in the room, "Tip-tap, tip-tap, who raps at my door?" The children answered, "We are the wind, the children of heaven." They went on eating. Hansel thought the roof tasted very nice. He tore off a great piece. Gretel broke a large round pane out of the window and sat down quite contentedly. Just then the door opened. A very old woman, walking upon crutches, came out. Hansel and Gretel were so frightened that they let fall what they had in their hands. The old woman, nodding her head, said, "Ah, you dear children, what has brought you here? Come in and stay with me. Nobody will do you harm. Don't be afraid." She took them both by the hand and led them into her cottage. Soon a good meal of milk and pancakes, along with sugar, apples and nuts, was spread on the table. In the back room were two nice little beds covered with white. Hansel and Gretel laid themselves down on the beds. They rested happily after all their hardships. The old woman was very kind to them. In reality, she was a wicked and cruel witch. She had built this bread and candy house in order to lure children. Her final purpose was to devour youth. As soon as children had been in her power, she had killed them, cooked and eaten them, and had made a great festival of the day. The old witch had red eyes and could not see very far. In contrast, she had a fine sense of smell like wild beasts, so she could know when children approached her house. When Hansel and Gretel came near the witch's house, she laughed wickedly, saying, "Here come two who shall not escape me." Early in the morning, before Hansel and Gretel awoke, she went up to them and saw how lovingly they lay sleeping with their chubby red cheeks. She smiled with pleasure. She mumbled to herself, "That will be a good bite." Then she took up Hansel with her rough hand and shut him up in a little cage with a lattice door. Although he screamed loudly, it was of no use. Shaking Gretel till she awoke, the witch said, "Get up, you lazy thing. Fetch some water to cook something good for your brother. Your brother should remain in that stall and get fat. When he is fat enough, I will eat him." Gretel began to cry, but it was all useless because the old witch made her do as she wished. A nice meal was cooked for Hansel. The witch intended to make Hansel fatter for her food. Every morning the old witch came to the cage and said, "Hansel, stretch out your finger through the cage so that I may feel whether you are getting fat." Hansel had not stretched out his own finger. Instead, he used to stretch out a little animal's thin bone, which he had eaten and put aside. Of course, the bone was much thinner than his own finger. The old witch had a very bad sight, therefore, she was not able to distinguish the difference between them. She thought, "Today is not the right time to devour Hansel. Let me see further." For weeks had passed. Now Hansel was still quite lean and thin to the witch's eyes. She lost all her patience. She would not wait any longer. "Gretel," she called out in a passion, "get some water quickly. Whether Hansel is fat or lean, this morning I will kill and cook him." Oh, how the poor little sister grieved. As she was forced to fetch the water, the tears ran down her cheeks. "Dear good God, help us now," she exclaimed. "We should have died together in the forest the other day, rather than we have only been eaten by this witch today." The old witch called out again, "Stop that noise. It will not help you a bit." So, the little girl was forced to go out and fill the kettle, and make a fire. "I have already heated the oven and kneaded the dough," said the old woman. She pushed poor Gretel up to the oven out of which the flames were burning fiercely. The witch said, "Gretel, creep into the oven and see if it is hot enough. Then, I can put in the dough to make bread first." In reality, when Gretel got in, the witch intended to shut up the oven and let her bake first. She might eat her, as well as Hansel. Gretel was not brave but smart. She already noticed what the witch intended to do. She said, "I do not know how to do it. How shall I get in?" "You stupid goose," said she. "The opening is big enough. See, I could even get in myself." The witch got up and put her head into the oven. At this moment, Gretel gave her a push. The witch fell right into the oven. Gretel shut the oven door, made of iron, and bolted it tight. Gretel ran away, leaving the wicked witch to burn to ashes. Now she ran to the big cage which contained Hansel. She opened the cage door and called out, "Hansel, we are saved. The old witch is dead." Finally, Hansel sprang out like a bird out of a cage when the door is opened. They were so glad that they fell upon each other's neck and embraced each other. As there was nothing to fear, they went into the witch's house. In every corner were caskets full of pearls and precious stones. "These are better than pebbles," said Hansel, putting as many into his pocket as it would hold. Gretel thought, "I will take some home too." She filled her apron full. "We must be off now," said Hansel. "Get out of this enchanted forest quickly." When they had walked for 2 hours, they came to a large piece of water. "We cannot get over," said Hansel. "I can see no bridge at all." Gretel said, "There is no boat either. But look over there. There swims a white duck. I will ask her to help us over." She sang aloud, "Little duck so blithe and merry, Hansel and Gretel, here we stand. There is neither bridge nor ferry. Row us on your back to land." Sooner or later, the duck came to them. Hansel seated himself on her back and asked his sister to sit behind him. "No," answered Gretel. "That will be too much for the duck. She shall take us over one at a time." This the good little bird did as Gretel said. Both happily arrived on the other side. Going farther, they came to a woods which they knew the better every step they went. At last they saw their father's house. They began to run. Bursting into the house, they fell on their father's neck. He has not had one happy hour since he left the children in the forest. The stepmother died during their absence. Father embraced the children too. Then Gretel shook her apron. The pearls and precious stones rolled out on the floor. Hansel threw down one handful after another out of his pocket. All their sorrows were ended. They lived together in great happiness.